Joining us now, she is the head coach at UNCW. Of course, has led that program to the NCAA tournament a couple of years ago. And they got a big home series here in conference play this weekend as they will host Elon. UNCW and Elon, one of the marquee matchups in the CAA. She's back on the show, but this will be the first time she talks to me instead of my co-host, Victor. I speak of Ashley Wade joining us here back on In the Circle at D1 Softball, powered by 643. How you doing?
I am doing great, Eric. How are you?
Very good. What have you learned about your group now here as you're starting conference play? What have you learned so far this season about this group?
This group has been very special from the fall. And I think as a coach, you can kind of see it early and you can obviously see potential in what your group is capable of doing. But how they were in the fall and how they've just continued to progress as the season has come along. And even when our season started, obviously in February, we weren't playing our best, but we've seen it get better and better each and every week. And, have seen a lot of great things from our pitching staff, from our defense, from our offense throughout that time as well. But I think for them, we have a really young team on the field. And so you've got some experienced juniors who are on the field as well that participated in regionals a couple of years ago. And then there's a lot of young people as well. But I think for us as a team, just haven't peaked yet and are starting to just now, the past couple of weeks, starting to put it all together, which is a really exciting thing for us.
So I want to ask you about Camille Hamilton, was the D1 Softball National Freshman of the Week. Been major throw in making history for your program because you mentioned the youth there. Throwing a perfect game against A&T, first in the programs, I believe. There, like what?
Yes.
That's a pretty historic there. First of all, were you aware what was going on during that game?
I was aware starting around the beginning of the fourth inning, and I was like, wait a minute. I was like, there hasn't been a runner on. So I, of course, like look at my chart and I'm like, nope. And the funny part of the whole entire thing is even after the game had ended, Camille had no idea what happened. She thought that everyone was rushing her because it was a shutout. And she was like, I've thrown shutouts before. Why is everyone like storming me? And it wasn't until after it was over and they're like, no, it was a perfect game. And so she didn't know, her parents didn't know, but as the coaching staff, we knew obviously. And so I think it was just a really cool moment for her. And she is a really special talent. And we've kind of known that. And it's a really cool thing for her to have a perfect game. But of course, for it to be the first in program history is obviously a really special thing.
Just a couple of other stats about her, how good she's been. She's coming this week, 11th in the country in strikeouts to walk ratio, 32nd in the country in strikeouts per 7 innings. Just talk about her stuff. I mean, electric there. That's good stuff for a freshman.
Yeah.
Normally, freshmen have control issues, but not the case with her.
No, she's so poised on the mound and is just very calm natured in her demeanor. But her stuff is so good. It moves a ton. And I mean, you can know what's coming, but you still have to hit it as an offense. And so I think for her, she's got a lot of vertical separation within her pitches and has just done a really good job of kind of fine tuning her craft in the circle.
Let's talk about the rest of the pitching staff. Just talk about what you have there. How would you describe the staff?
Yeah, Michaela Huddleston was our ace last year. And so obviously she is returning and brings a lot of leadership within our pitching staff. And everybody else is returning as well that we had last year. So Taylor Barlow, she was a transferred in last year as well, and so she is back. And we have a new pitching coach this year in Kyler Holton, and he's done a phenomenal job with them as a whole pitching staff and just getting them ready to go for the spring. But she's back and also has some of that leadership in there. And then Lindsay Herman, she was a freshman last year, and so she had a really great run once we got into conference as a freshman and was just really successful for us in the circle. And she's kind of just picked up where she left off and has kept it rolling. And then Peyton Eckert is a completely new pitcher this year. And so, she's been on our team. This is her third year with us now. And so she's had some ups and downs throughout that journey. But to see her now and the confidence that she has and just how much she's evolved as a pitcher is a really cool thing to see. Obviously, you don't really see that on the bigger stage when you're watching the game, but day in and day out to see her and how much she's evolved is just a really cool thing to see.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, for a couple of stats here for the pitching staff, they're 29th in the country in ERA, 10th in the country in shutouts. Are they ahead of schedule where you thought the staff would be? Are they right where you thought they'd be? Are you close where you want to be with them?
They're honestly kind of where I thought they would be. So I knew that depth wise, I think that we have the most depth in a pitching staff, especially in the CAA. And so there are other teams that obviously have great pitchers on their staff, but I think as far as going five deep, that's something that not a lot of people have. And I think it's a hard problem for us because we can have any matchup we want, a good and a bad thing. And so I think for us, it's kind of where we thought that they would be and where we projected that they would be. And I think the special part is I still see them getting better week after week, which is what you want as a coach. And so to see them continue to get better and to grow in their confidence, and that's just going to pick up and get rolling as we go into the CAA play, that's the perfect timing for it. And we talked about it as a team, you don't want to peak too early. And so we're kind of right on track of where we're going, of continuing to get better. And the pitchers are very much within that as well.
Offensively, you're in the top 15 in the country in steals per game there. Is that part of the identity? It seems like it's the speed and causing havoc in the base paths.
Yeah, I think finished fourth in the country last year in steals, so definitely a big part of our game. And we don't have quite as much speed this year as we did last year. We graduated some people that were big steal threats for us. And so the hard part for me as a coach is we have the speed and we can have even more steals, but we're hitting so many doubles right now that makes it a little bit more challenging, but it's the good kind of challenge. But no, as a team, obviously speed is a very big part of our game. And just to be able to manufacture things on the bases and put pressure on a defense is a unique thing for us.
Talk about some of the offensive leaders and who stands out that really kind of make this offense go for those that haven't followed your team on a daily basis.
Yeah, Cassie Relay is a junior for us. She's been a starter since she was a freshman. And so she is our leadoff hitter and has been since she got here. And so she is just constantly getting on base. I think her on base percentage is somewhere close to 600 or something. I feel like she's always on base and doing a good job for us, and obviously leading us in stolen bases as well. So she's very much the table setter for our offense at the top of the lineup. And then we have a couple of freshmen that are right behind her that our lineup has fluctuated a little bit as far as the order of it, but Becca Merrick as a freshman has done a really good job of just getting on base and being composed in those situations. Emily Whitwell had been the two hitter for a long time right behind Cass, and they're kind of like the power slapper duo at the top of the lineup, and a lot of speed for her as well. And then Ava Brookshire, another freshman, has been our RBI queen. And so she's just constantly bringing people in and has done a great job with that, of capitalizing with runners in scoring position. And then I think our breakout returner this year has kind of been Avery Daughtry, not somebody who has had a ton of playing experience so far, but now in her junior year has worked really hard and has just come up in some really big moments for us. And then Sierra Persinger a little bit too, is she's getting hot and has just come away with some really big clutch hits for us as well.
Who are the leaders on your group? Who are your vocal leaders? Do you have vocal leaders? Is it leaders by example? Who are some of the leaders that stands out for this? A young team, like you said, young roster. See, that becomes even more important to have the leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. We have the best of both worlds. We have your vocal leaders. Cassidy Relay is a huge vocal leader for us. Michaela Huddleston is another one. Allison Corbin is another one. And then our leaders by example, I mean, they're the people. Even Becca Merrick as a freshman has stepped up and has led by both by example and vocally. So I think those are some of the big ones. Sierra Persinger is another leader for us. And obviously she's just a sophomore, but that's something that we saw out of her a lot last year as a freshman, and kind of just encouraged her to continue to flourish as a leader. And on our team, it doesn't matter if you're a senior or a freshman, anybody can step up and lead in any moment. And then as far as the lead by example, I think the hardest working person on our team is Ava Chupley's. And so she's not somebody that has seen a lot of playing time yet so far this year, but she's always doing the right things, is always working the hardest, and is always leading by example and kind of bringing people along with that with her.
This is your fourth season as the head coach here at UNCW. How are you different today than you were when you took over the job?
I think just not trying to do too much with it, and just taking your team for who they are and what they're capable of doing, and trying to make them better at things that they're already strong at, rather than trying to focus too much on maybe some of the bigger areas where we have room. And so it's kind of just embracing the speed factor and embracing that base running is going to be a really big thing that we do, and hitting some doubles and doing all of that. And I think just as a coach, I've always been kind of the players kind of coach, where the relationship side is something that's really important. And when you take over a team, obviously you're coming in, you don't know them, they don't know you. And so there's a lot of learning on both sides that goes into that. And I think that now that we've had people on the team that have been with me. This is obviously their fourth year with me, and just having those like solid foundational relationships, which is something that I couldn't have obviously had in the beginning, I think is a really big thing. And now I'm starting to get our own recruits into the program. So our freshman class, in all reality, is the first class that we had a true year to recruit, because by the time I got hired, September 1st was 2 days away, my first year. So our current sophomores were a little bit rushed in the process, and obviously grateful to have all of them here. And I think we found some really great ones. But our current freshman class is kind of the first full class of a recruiting cycle for us.
Relationship, how important is that? Even more imperative now, because I feel like your job is kind of changed on the fly, or at least part of it, with the landscape that college athletics has brought now with the transfer portal. I mean, it's no secret there with all the movement. Certainly your conference has been, affected by that, so you have to kind of build that relationship and that trust to keep your players, but also have relationships to where, if you have to replace a player, you have to go to the portal and add a piece there and kind of get to know them a little bit. So just talk about that part of it, how imperative that is in today's landscape.
I think that that's huge for us as a program. I think that's always been something that's been a strength, is just the culture of our team. And that comes down to relationships amongst themselves, but with us as coaches. And it used to be people would transfer if they were unhappy, or, there were much more legitimate reasons to do it. And now you can have the happiest kid in the world and they go have a successful year and end up in the portal. So you just never know in today's world what's going to happen. And obviously we have no idea if we're going to be hit with that at the end of this year either. We've got people successful, so you just never know anymore. But I think the relationship piece of it, our players know that we care about them as people more than we care about them as a softball player. And there's plenty of other programs that are like that, but there's others that are not, and it's much more business like. And so I think for us, our players really thrive with that relationship piece of it. I think it allows us to push them a little bit harder, because we know each individual and kind of what pushes their buttons, and what you can say to one person is very different than what you say to another person to get to the same result. And so I think us as coaches, we know that, and we care about having those relationships with them. And even when it's an off day or things like that, we'll have like a team walk at the beach or anything, obviously voluntary, but, just different team things to do together, because they really enjoy just being around each other, but enjoy getting to know us as coaches away from the field.
Now, I don't know if you realize, but your next win, you get a milestone.
I
100.
do.
Okay. So when I say that number, 100 wins, does it feel like it's gone by quick? Like, how did you describe it?
Yeah, it's something that I really haven't thought about until this year kind of started. And then I looked at it and I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like I only need 16 wins to get there. And so I think that's a really cool thing as a head coach to be able to reach that milestone. It's obviously like you get your first win, and then there's really nothing else milestone wise until you get to 100. So I think for me, it's not something that I've really sought out to try to do, to accomplish, or to achieve in a certain time. We just go about our business and try to win every single game, and the numbers will add up as they will. But definitely something that I'm aware of. I don't think anybody else around here even knows that is right around the corner. But I think it's just a cool thing kind of for me as a personal achievement to kind of check off.
A couple years ago, you won the conference championship, got to go to the regionals. How would you describe that year? How would you describe that run to get to the regionals, as you were sent, I think, to Athens, I want to say?
Yes.
Yes. But, so what was that experience like? And what did you learn from that you'll take with you moving forward as a coach?
Yeah, so as a team, we've won 2 championships in the last 4 years, and I was fortunate to be a part of the most recent one. I wasn't a part of their first one in school history. And so they went in 2022, and the way that it was described to me is that the team was just happy to be there because it was the first time they had gotten to that feat. And, they were a little bit deer in headlights in the stadium at Clemson there. And you kind of expect that, as the first time doing something or competing on a stage like that. So when we won in 2024, there were a lot of returners that had been a part of that 2022 championship. And so I think our younger class, it's our current juniors, but there were a lot of them that were playing as freshmen. And I think they really leaned on that junior class to give them that experience and that knowledge of what playing was going to be like. So that way it wasn't this foreign thing. So when we made it in 2024, nobody was just happy just to be there at that point. that's kind of something that the first time that you do it ever, that's what you're happy to do. But they were there and they wanted to win and they expected to win and they just were treating it as any other game. And as cool as it was, we're like, okay, take it in during the practice time, but come game time, like it's just any other game, regardless of what the setting is or how many cameras are there or anything like that. And so I think for me as a coach, I want to intentionally make a schedule where we're playing in some sort of regional type atmosphere in our non-conference schedule. So that way, when we do make it to regionals again, it's not the first time that they've competed in a stadium like that or played against a big name team or an SEC team or anything like that. So we actually went back to Georgia this year in our non-conference schedule and had a tough weekend there, but we are so much better for it. And, you know, you talk about Camille Hamilton as a freshman, we knew that she was going to be a anchor within our pitching staff and, you know, really expected her to fill into that role. And so she got a start against Georgia and didn't really go the best as far as her starts go, but she was better for it because of facing a team like that and facing an offense like that. So when we go to regionals, hopefully at the end of this year, it's not the first time that any of these freshmen that are impact players for us so far are going to be competing in an arena like that.
It's you're definitely not shy of playing opponents. You mentioned Georgia. You're playing the Dukes of the, Carolinas. Obviously, the region helps a little bit. I get that. But one thing that impresses me is not only are you going to their places, but some of those cases, they're coming to your place, which is kind of a big deal. Talk about that and having that respect now from some of the power programs that are willing to come to your place.
Yeah, I think, our program has done a really good job over the last few years of making a much more regional name for ourselves, whether it's recruiting or it's against other D1 opponents. And to be able to have that kind of home and away where, we rotate year after year and to play people. We've beaten a P4 every single year that I've been here so far, except for this year as of right now. And so that's just something that our players obviously get excited to do, but to be able to host teams like Duke shortly after they won or were in the World Series is a big thing for our community to come out and watch us play them and have competitive games against them. And so I think it's a really cool thing for us as a program. I'm never going to create a schedule that's just easy and going after wins. I don't want that. I don't care about the wins part of it. I care about making our program better. And I think that you get better by playing some of those top teams in the country. And we're fortunate to have so many competitive programs within a 2-3 hour radius of us to be able to have some of those midweeks or, go to them on a given weekend for non-conference slate. But we're fortunate location wise to be competitive with who's around us. But even you have Coastal, who's obviously really good. You have ECU, who's really good. So you've got Charlotte. So you still have mid-major programs as well that are very successful and continue to push us forward.
No doubt they do. Across the board, that's a big plus to have that without question. Talk about your kind of getting into coaching softball. What was it that got you into coaching? Because you've paid your dues. For people that don't know, and you can feel free to share as much as you want about your journey to coaching, being the head coach. Was being a head coach a goal? Did it just kind of happen? Just talk about the journey. What got you into coaching?
Yeah, I didn't really, when I initially got into it, know that I wanted to do it. And as a softball player, a lot of us don't. Softball's been your whole life. And so when you graduate and you come time to get a job, you're like, well, now what am I supposed to do? And so my first coaching job kind of fell into my lap. I knew an assistant coach at Coppin State and they needed another assistant. And he said, well, if you don't know what you want to do you want to come help us out? I said, sure. So I made $4,000 a year and lived at home, thankfully. Otherwise, I don't know where I would have lived. But that's kind of how I got into it. And so I think a lot of the coaching world, it's all in who you know and the connections that you have. And other than that one connection at Coppin State, I really didn't have anything. And so I was there for a couple years and then went to Stevenson University, which is a D3 school in Maryland, for a few years and worked under Joey Lai there, who's now the head at IMG Academy and played for Team Canada. And then after that, went out to Northwestern Oklahoma State, a D2 for a year as a GA. And then from there got the job at Northern Illinois. And so was at NIU for 7 years. And I think that was a big reason as to why I'm here at UNCW, obviously, because I've really had to work my way up. But being a head coach was always the goal for me. And it just, for me, took a lot more steps to try to get there and really having to work to get to every next spot that I got. And when it came time for UNCW, ironically, So I'm from Maryland, born and raised there, but have always loved the Carolinas. The Carolinas have always felt like home to me. And so my dad lived down in Myrtle Beach, which is less than an hour from where we are in Wilmington. And so we had always talked about, the two of us is like where I might end up as a head coach. And it was always, well, Coastal Carolina, and obviously Kelly's been there for a long time, or UNCW or College of Charleston, and just location wise, he wanted me to be closer to him. And so we had kind of talked about that as the two of us of where those stops might be. And he unfortunately passed away about a year before I took this job. But when this job opened, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to go for it, because it's one of the three places that we used to talk about of where I could be. And this is honestly the second closest one to where he would have been. And so it kind of just all seemed to fall into place, and a little irony that goes along with it too. But the goal was always to be a head coach and hopefully to get back to the East Coast as well.
It's like it was meant to be.
Yeah.
Like the odds of that popping up with all that, it's amazing.
Yes, the only job I applied for, and thankfully got it.
That's wild. What was it like working for Joey Lai? Obviously, we've had her on the show. She's an Olympian, accomplished player, has been a college head coach. What was it like working with her? And I'm sure she helped you, guide you through this whole process. I'm assuming.
She did. She and I are really close friends and have been obviously since I worked with her at Stevenson. And so she's been a great mentor and friend and resource for me throughout all of this. And, she had been a head coach before. And when I talked with her, she said, Ashley, you'll never feel ready. You just have to do it. Because every time she would try to talk to me, she would say, I'd be like, no, I'm not ready for that yet. And I felt like I needed more and more experience. And she's like, no, you're more ready than you think you are. And she kind of pushed me into it. And she was right. I think that's just the comfortability of like fear of taking the next leap and all of that. But she's been a huge resource for me. We obviously still stay in touch and love all the cool things that she's doing with IMG now. And she's just been a phenomenal mentor and friend throughout this journey.
How did you get into softball in general? Because it's not like, hey, I played at a certain school 4 years. You had a unique journey. Talk about growing up and what you wanted to do and how you got into softball.
Yeah, I played a lot of different sports growing up. I actually started playing baseball, which is you hear among a lot of softball players. And so I was the only girl on the baseball team because they didn't have a softball team. And so I was kind of that stubborn, hard-headed, well, okay, you don't have a girls team, then I'll just try out for the boys team. And so ended up playing baseball for a few years. And then once there was a softball team available, kind of switched over to that. But growing up, I played soccer, volleyball, basketball, softball, just athletic, and took part in whatever I could, and played AAU basketball a little bit as well in there, but obviously had to reach a point growing up that had to take a back seat because I'm 5'6" and that just wasn't going to work out. So just really softball has always kind of been the top sport in my life and just what I was most kind of connected to and what I really loved doing. And so going through college, my college journey was definitely not normal as far as what other people's college journeys were. And so ended up playing at a junior college in Maryland and then transferred to St. Leo in Florida. And so again, just not a unique journey, not to dive through all of that, but just softball has always been such a huge part of my life since I was 7 years old.
St. Leo, I know very well. We're nearby, great D2 program. And once again, they're in fact top 10 as we record this in the Division II rankings there. So
yeah,
they've done a good. Coach Kim Berger and company's done a good job over there.
She ironically was the GA when I was there.
Are you serious? Oh wow! Yeah. I did not know you. Okay, I didn't know if that was the connection. That's why I threw it out there to see what happened there. That's pretty cool. That's pretty wild there. You mentioned it. You didn't know if you wanted to be a coach. So have you thought, like, what would you be doing right now if you weren't coaching softball? Do you know?
No idea. So growing up, I wanted to be a vet, and that was something that I thought that I wanted to do. And then I also at one point thought like fashion merchandising, or I thought a like forensic person, because of course growing up and you watch Law and Order SVU, you just think that that's what you want to do. And so when I took a class freshman year of college, they said, okay, who is here because they want to be like somebody on a Law and Order? And I of course proudly raised my hand, and they're like, okay, drop the class because that's not real life. I'm like, oh, okay. So I don't really know what I would be doing, obviously, because this is all I've ever really done. But I had all kinds of dreams all over the place growing up and throughout college. My degree is in business, so I picked the most generic thing that I could just because I didn't know what that next step was going to be for me professionally. And I'm like, well, this can apply to anything. And so picked a business major and then obviously opened the door for coaching and just jumped right in.
And now you're hooked. You're hooked.
And now I'm hooked. Now I can't imagine doing anything else.
That's wild. That's ridiculous. How would Ashley Wade, the head coach, and Ashley Wade, the player, if they're in the same room, how would they coexist? Would they be on the same page? Would there be some clashes there?
No, I think that they would coexist and they would be fine. I think that, as my journey through playing in college wasn't the most conventional, and I think as a head coach, and as a coach in general, as an assistant, I wanted to be the kind of coach that I wish that I had. And so, not to speak about anybody or anything like that, but growing up, you either have coaches with people that you love things about them, or you don't like things about them. And so, I think when you become a coach, you get to pick and choose what that looks like for you and who you are. And obviously, you can take things from whether it's somebody that you played for or somebody that you admire just watching from afar from a coaching standpoint. And so you can kind of piece that together to make who you are as a coach. And so I think for me, player Ashley versus coach Ashley, I just tried to be the coach that I wanted to have. So I think player Ashley would love playing for coach Ashley.
And it goes back to that relationship and being able to relate to every player on the roster.
Mm-hmm. I think that piece of it, but also being pushed too. Like I don't,
Sure.
I preferred to play for a kind of coach that was harder and pushed me beyond what I thought that I was capable of doing, even if I thought they were crazy in the moment. And so I think that's what I try to do for our players is push them beyond what they think they're capable of doing. And then they can get surprised at the end of it.
No doubt. Let's talk CAA. This is a big series this weekend against Elon. They're the defending conference tournament champions. The battle of the last two conference tournament champions, the last two to represent the league in the NCAA tournament. Talk about the league as a whole this year in 2026. It feels deeper with contenders, with your team, Elon, Campbell. Talk about the league as an outlook for those that don't follow it very closely.
Yeah, for those that don't follow it, this is the first year that we have a North and a South. So this is different for all of us. We're used to having one big conference, and you obviously have crossover opponents that you play that are from further away. We go as far north as Stony Brook and Hofstra, and as far south as Charleston. And so there are always people that you didn't play. But for us now, there's a North and a South. And so you play everyone in your division, which for us, our division is us, Campbell, Elon, North Carolina A&T, and Hampton, and then Charleston. And so there's the 6 of us in the South. And so we have one repeat opponent. And for us this year, that's Charleston this year. And they won the regular season last year, even though Elon won the tournament. And so the Northern teams, they have 2 repeat opponents that they have because they have 5 teams up there. So for us, this whole divisional format is something different. And in order to make it into the conference tournament, you need to finish either the 1 or the 2 seed in your division to be the spots 1 through 4. And then the 5 and the 6 are the top 2 conference winning percentages, regardless of division. So you could end up with 4 teams from one division and then 2 teams in the other. And so I think for us, I think the South is pretty stacked. We've got a lot of the heavy hitters up there, not to say that the North doesn't. There's some good competition up there as well. But for us in the South, it's definitely going to be a battle for that. And obviously we have us and Elon are the only 2 unbeaten teams in the South so far going head to head. So somebody's record is going to be blemished after this weekend at some point. And so you have Charleston right behind Elon, and we have them next weekend. So we've got kind of the top 3 within the South, including us, over the next 2 weeks. So just a really big stretch for us, especially in the Southern Division. That's what you want to try to do, is to secure one of those spots by being in the top 2 in the South, rather than waiting for the game of being in the top winning percentage, regardless of North and the South. So that's kind of where we are within it. And Campbell obviously is a great program and has historically done well over the past few years as well. And that's who we faced in 2024 in the championship and had to play them twice to secure that win. And so Campbell is who we finished with at the end of the season as our senior weekend. And so for us to kind of have the top heavy hitters in the South at the beginning and then Campbell at the end. So it's a challenging schedule for us, but one that I'm excited for.
I mean, I'll co-sign you. That South division is rough, Coach. I'm glad you said it, not me. I didn't want to bring it up, but you brought it up. I agree. What led to this? Is it geography? Just travel? What led to this?
Delaware left.
Yeah.
So when Delaware left the conference, it was an odd number of schools that are left. So there's 11 softball schools now. And so I think it's Delaware leaving in conjunction with just travel and finances, and I'm sure it was an 80 budgetary decision for that. So now the thought process is each school has no more than one flight, where last, I forget which year it was, but we flew to Stony Brook and we flew to, I think, Monmouth or Drexel or something. And so now it's no more than one flight for each conference school as far as conference games go. So I think that's their way of maneuvering around that from the budget standpoint.
Does that impact the hosting as far as the conference tournament host?
So the conference tournament host now is whoever wins the tournament gets to host the following year. So the tournament this year will be at Elon because they won last year. That changed, of course, the year after we won.
Of course.
Yes, I'm like, oh, great. That's wonderful. But we will host again, just not this year. So this year it'll be at Elon. So obviously, if you're making that and you're from further away, then you would obviously fly.
As a program, was the last time you hosted? Do you know offhand?
We hosted in 2024 when we won.
Okay, so they did get to host. Okay,
then, and it was a really cool thing to be able to win on your own field, obviously. And then Hofstra won, and they hosted in an earlier year. And so Elon actually hosted in 2022. So in 2022, Elon hosted, and they were in the championship with UNCW, and then UNCW run-rolled them in the championship game.
What did you like? What experience was that like from a hosting? Because I've had a lot of coaches. Some, obviously, the majority like it. Don't get me wrong. You want to host, you want to have that opportunity. But I've had coaches tell me that could be a distraction at times that you have to kind of be prepared for because your players are getting tickets requests and a bunch of stuff. Sometimes there's final exams going on, et cetera, like that. So what did you learn, from a hosting standpoint, if you host in the near future, what are some things that you will keep in the back of your mind?
I loved it. I think it was great. And I think that, we historically play really well at home. And I don't know what our home record is, but I know that we win a lot more at home than we do on the road. And so I think, and especially in that season in particular in 2022 or 2024, we were undefeated at home in conference play. And so I think that momentum going into hosting the tournament, we knew that no conference school had beaten us at home that entire season, which is the first time that's ever happened in school history. And so for us, hosting was phenomenal. I think it gave us a lot of familiarity and just comfort within that. And our players just love playing at home. It was great for our alumni, obviously, to come back and be in the stands and be so supportive in the community as well. But going into that hosting, we didn't know, we knew we would not always be in our home dugout. So leading up to that, I had the benefit of making us practice in the opposite dugout for a couple of weeks going into the tournament because I knew that there would be a time where we would have to be in that other dugout. So I wanted our players to get used to it and, practicing with crowd noise and all the things that you normally do just to try to get your players as ready as possible for those things that are not on a scouting report.
Well, I know under your watch, they've had the best win percentage at home. You guys have had protect your home. Is that a message to your players to protect your home field?
I mean, yes and no. I think it's just kind of an unwritten standard at this point. We don't really talk about it. It's not something we focus on any different than if we're on the road trying to do something. But for us, I think that it's just more important to them and I think means a little bit more when they're playing in front of our home crowd and our players' parents. They travel really well and they're constantly on the road. And sometimes on the road, we have more fans than the home team does as well. So, they have their family and fan support regardless of where we're playing. But I think when you're at home, they're used to our field. And so there's just some comfortability there that they feel, I guess, more ready to go. I don't know.
Should be good. Let me let you go on this. You've been kind enough to join us here. Rest of the year now, moving forward. What are a couple things you want to see from your team you think has to improve or something you want to work on that you think could be the difference in accomplishing all your goals?
I think the biggest thing for us is consistency. And so I think a lot of coaches are going to say that when we put all three parts of the sides of the ball together, we're really tough to beat. And so we have the capability of obviously being super successful. I think we've seen games where our pitching staff has been lights out and our defense has been really good and offense has struggled and we've come away with wins. And obviously there have been some other times where defense, if you have two parts of the game that are going well for you on that given day, you have a really high probability of winning. But if we're able to actually put all three parts of the game together and keep that consistently going, we're really tough to beat. And it's obviously easier said than done within that. But I think we are getting into a good spot with our offense. I think the biggest thing offensively, we've been really great about getting runners on. It's just capitalizing with runners in scoring position has kind of been what's holding us back until the past few weeks. We've been really great at that the past few weeks. And I think our pitching staff is in a really good spot, and defensively, we're just continuing to get better and better and more consistent. So I think consistency is going to be the biggest key as we keep going, knowing that, on any given day. I think really cool thing about our offense is, Cassidy Relay has been the leader for us offensively, highest in average, highest in on-base percentage. She had a down week a couple weeks ago, and she wasn't getting on quite as much. But somebody else stepped up and took over that. And so I think that's the whole beauty of an offense as a team, is it doesn't have to be one person, but having each other's backs offensively and then just finding that consistency on all sides of the ball.
There's one coach in the history of UNCW softball that has a winning record and a highest win percentage. And you just heard her, ladies and gentlemen. UNCW head coach Ashley Wade, kind enough to join us here on In the Circle at D1 Softball, powered by 643. Coach, great to have you on. Good luck this season. Maybe we'll do a sequel here maybe in May if things work out for you. But in the meantime, good luck this season. Thanks for talking to us. I'm sure we'll get you back on down the road. But thanks for taking the time and tell your story and talk to us here on In the Circle on D1 Softball.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Eric, for having me. I appreciate it.